Hey, I want to welcome you to another episode of Money Matters Top Tips for Success, where each and every day I bring on new business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and have them share their top tips for success with you. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at @AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, moneymatterstoptips.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Dusty Rollins on the line, and he's founder over at Oxford Business Services. Dusty, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Great to be here, and I'm excited.
Same here. I'm excited to get into what you're doing over at Oxford Business Services and how you're helping your clients. But before we do that, let's get a little bit into your background. So how did you get started in your career and in business?
Great question. I love it. So I grew up in a boarding school in Asia, and so I had a unique perspective on things. And when I came back to the States, I did the dutifully journey to college, and I always tell people I love learning, I hate school. So I muddled through that, graduated, and then within a quick period of time, I was working for a nonprofit group. I realized that I was unemployable, and so it was just not working. So I kind of went into business by default, if you will. Now I'm thrilled to death, right? But I went in by default. And so when I got into business, I just went into real estate because, of course, when you have no training and no skills and no business knowledge, real estate's the easy thing, right? I bought one of those courses off TV, No Money Down Real Estate, and went into it. And it really started opening my eyes. It was really, business is, in my mind, the biggest challenge we have. Like, it really reveals who you are on a deep conceptual level. And so I did really well at the beginning, and then I had some really crash and burn type things, and bankruptcy, foreclosure, the whole gamut, that really makes you question who you are, what you're made of, what you're doing. And so, but I kept trudging on, and then that's the main way that I got into the business, is by default rather than by some clearly devious take over the world plan.
Wow, I love that story, and I think it's very consistent. I mean, we've done 1,000 episodes here, and it's really consistent. Wow. With many of the people I've interviewed. So sometimes people think it's just this clear-cut path, oh, I did A, then B, then C, and it's like, no, there are some zigs and some zags in this journey, the ups, the downs, the sideways, really everything in between. So that being said, Dusty, there's some younger entrepreneurs or people that are just graduating that are listening to this now, and maybe they're where you were when you bought that first course or got that first thing to realize, hey, I'm unemployable, aka I need to start my own business. What kind of advice would you give to that newbie that's out there really just getting started?
It's a great question, and I love it. And I have a buddy that is a Marine. You're always a Marine, right? A U.S. Marine.
Right.
And he talks to me about boot camp, which is a pretty intense thing. And he talks about it's something I would never do again in a million years, and I wouldn't give up for the world. And so I think the tension is similar to at least my business journey. It's tough. And I tell people, look, it's, in financial services, I know you were way back, Adam, you were in financial services. I tell people, if you're trying to get into that field in particular, if you can make it 5 years, it'll be the most beautiful business you've ever imagined. But only about 1 out of 100 can make it to 5 years. So to answer your question, they need to really focus on their mental side, on the fear side, on really kind of buckling down and getting ready and then committing. And I remember for probably the first 10 years of my business career, I was always, and again, remember I just said I'm unemployable, but I'd go to back then that we actually had real newspapers, I'd go to the classified section and see what jobs were out there, nearly daily, that I just needed a backup plan. And I heard a quote from a guy. He said, look, you can quit at any day, you can quit and go get a job, just not today. And I'm telling you, that really got me through I mean, there were days, and if you do that for enough days, if you do that for 3,000 days, then you've been in business almost 10 years, right? So it's not, to me, it's not even this grand scheme. It's just this big gut level of saying you really got to want it. And that would be the other thing. I think you said one thing, and I'm on 8 here, but another thing would be you just have to want it. If you don't want it, then it's okay. Don't judge yourself or beat yourself up. Just keep a job. There's no shame in that at all. But if you're going to start your own business and launch out, you just have to want it, because there will be times when nobody, including yourself, thinks you can do it.
Man, that's awesome. That's great advice. Let's switch it up a bit, Dusty. I want to get into what you're doing over at Oxford Business Services. So first, tell me a little bit more about the business, please.
Excellent. So when I got into business, like I was talking before, we got into real estate, and after a couple of years, we had a good year and we owed taxes. So we went to our accountant at the time, and he said, well, you made this and you owe this. And we're like, no. Let's renegotiate. I declined the offer. Thank you, but no, I'm not. You mixed up my file with some other rich guy. I could not owe that big of a tax bill because I didn't make that much in my mind. So that began this self-pursuit of tax planning, and that ultimately I went and got credentials and licenses and everything to practice for the IRS. But that began my self-learning. And one of the things that's interesting, what I do now at Oxford Business Services, one of the advantages I believe I have that I bring to the table is I'm what I call a front-of-the-check advisor, meaning I have been there in those dark, deep moments when you borrow money, you put your family at risk, you put all of your financial dreams on hold, you're borrowing money to write a check and sign the front of a check to pay employees to keep your dream going. And a lot of times they're employees you don't even care about, like they're or they're talking behind your back. It's like all this emotion. So when you have done that, when you've signed the front of a check, something on a gut level has shifted. And so I find a lot of these business owners, I'm sure a lot of your listeners, they have done that. We're front of the check people. And yet all of our advisors, or this is what I typically find, all of our advisors are not. So if you're a CPA or your tax advisor, if they aren't front of the check people, there's going to be a level that they can't go to and they can't relate to you, which I can, because I didn't get into the tax business first. I got into business first and then went into the tax business.
That's awesome. So what do you find are some of the biggest pain points of, and because I know not everybody does this extra layer. So what I mean by that is they know that there's possibly other tax strategies out there. They know there's other things that maybe their CPA, they've been with their CPA
right.
20 years, and you're not replacing CPAs, just to be clear for everyone listening. So Dusty's
exactly.
not replacing CPAs. He's adding and layering additional strategies. So that on top of what the great work they're already doing for you. So he's a partner. That being said, why do you think some people don't take that extra step to call a company like Oxford Business Services when they know that there's the potential to be help there?
Great question again. You've been doing this a while. You're a good interviewer. So I think there is in our back of our psyche, there is this fear of an audit. And I think the IRS, I had a buddy who used to work for the criminal division of the IRS, which they're the real bad guys. They carry guns and they go after the Al Capone type people. So he was a lifelong criminal division attorney, and we go and smoke cigars together. And he was telling me that a number of years ago, he wasn't the main guy, but he worked on the case against Wesley Snipes, because it was actually just in a district over from me. And, Wesley Snipes was a famous actor who was a tax protester, and he ended up getting the maximum. I think he ended up getting like 3 years in jail. I don't know if he served it all, but he was, Wesley Snipes was basically saying he wasn't looking for deductions. He was saying, I don't have to, it's not a requirement to pay taxes. So all these politicians that tell us that the tax code is voluntary, it is completely voluntary till you decide not to volunteer, and then it's involuntary, and you can go to jail. The point of it is this. My buddy said, Wesley Snipes got the maximum sentence because if a little business owner, a little guy that owns a donut shop in some armpit town in America, if he goes to jail for IRS fraud, nobody knows. If Wesley Snipes goes to jail for fraud, everybody knows. So they saw that as a big bang for the buck. And so there is a lot of intimidation out there that's not warranted. And so all the strategies we do are IRS approved. And so it doesn't mean we never get audited. It just means it's not an issue if you run it right and set it up right. An audit should not be something that is fearful. So I find a lot of business owners will overpay their taxes for 10, 12, 15, 20 years because they're scared of an audit that never actually happens.
Wow. So Dusty, if somebody's listening to this and they want more information on Oxford Business Services, what's your sweet spot in terms of client that you like working with? So if they're driving their car right now and they're like, I might fall into that category, I could have somebody else take another look at this. What's the sweet spot in terms of type of client you like working with?
Perfect question. Let me explain it this way. There's 3 levels of tax planning. Level 1 is a W-2. You're an employee. Nothing wrong. It's something like 80+%, 90% of Americans get a W-2, right? But when you're that person and you don't have a business, you're basically screwed. There's basically nothing you can do on the tax planning side. So that's level 1. Level 2, so everyone on level 1 says, well, what can I do, Dusty? I say, well, start a business. So level 2 is the business owner. And the IRS punishes you if you don't have a business. So on level 2, if you have a business, you can start doing all the deductions. I'm sure you take advantage, Adam, of the legal write-offs, the mileage and things you use for business that you don't pay tax on that income. And so we do a lot of that. But where our firm specializes is what we call level 3. It's the elite, it's the Navy SEALs type stuff, and it's where. And on level 1 and 2, the IRS is the enemy. They're kind of the great dark side or the evil empire, to use a Star Wars analogy. On level 3, you actually begin to partner with the IRS. Now, here's what I mean with that, because all the libertarians in your audience just had a shot of pain, awkwardly go up their spine when you talk about partnering with the government. It's not a partnership. It's not a surrender. But the IRS uses the tax code to guide behavior. And so what I tell people is when you're building wealth as a business owner, when what you're wanting to do aligns with what the IRS is wanting to reward with tax favorability, when you can align those 2 items, then that's where the magic happens. That's where the IRS is actually helping you build your wealth. And now think of how much of a different mindset it is. So it's not like we're buddy-buddy with the IRS at all. It's just a matter of we're saying, hey, business owners, here are some of the tax strategies that the IRS is saying they want you to use because in their infinite wisdom, this will help the economy, the country, what have you, if we align that with what you're trying to do. So to answer your question, that elite level, that business owner really needs to be doing a minimum of 500, preferably $1 million or more, and have several employees. And when they do that, we can open up that whole tax magic woodshed there that is just a phenomenal amount of tools.
That's awesome. So Dusty, so if somebody's listening to this and they do fit that criteria, what's the best way for them to get in touch with Oxford Business Services?
If they go to DustyRollins.com, Dusty Rollins, ROLLINS.com, I'll send you a link too for the show notes, Adam. If they go there, my book is called The Taxpayer Manifesto, and I've got a link on there where they can get a completely free, real copy. See, I'm old enough that I still like to read real books. So I'll ship it out, and it's not any of this free plus shipping stuff where you give your credit card and pay $8 for shipping. It's completely free. No credit card needed. Just put your name and mailing address, and I will ship you a copy.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Dusty, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background and all the great work you're doing over at Oxford Business Services to help your clients. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes store, do all those great things we do to support our podcasters. I really do appreciate it. And Dusty, thanks again for coming on the show.